Hello and welcome. This is Alchemistexe, and today is another iteration of new player questions. This time we're going to be tackling jobs, job pluses, job enchants, basically the different types of jobs and what those differences mean, as well as how to obtain the relevant items associated with the different job types. And then secondly, I received a few comments on the previous new player questions that were specifically requesting that I talk about characters or jobs that are good for beginners and what that means, and who some of those characters are and what some of those jobs are. And so I'd like to address that as well. I feel like this is the right episode of new player questions to tackle that, because a character in essence is their combination of jobs. So first we're going to start with job types. And alright, let's begin. Okay, first and foremost, we're going to begin with just basic generic jobs. Now, beyond limit breaking a character via shards, these don't have to be unlocked in any way. They just come standard. Like Lambert here has Soldier, Thief, and Holy Knight. Now you do, for the second and third jobs, you do need to unlock them via tokens, but out of all of the job unlocking, these are the easiest to obtain. Let's take a look at Holy Knight here. Now I've got plenty of them, so I don't need to get more, but if I was to look at how to obtain them, they would be found here in this Knight's Trial Pursuit. Now the quests in the Daily Quest tab have a whole slew of different tokens, but all of the tokens that you obtain via the token quests are all going to be these generic jobs. It just varies whether or not it is a more kind of basic one or a more advanced one. But the method is the same either way. And it's an incredibly easy quest, so you can do it with, whatever your starting units are. And when it comes to obtaining the items to level these jobs up, they are all just obtained via story mode quests, either normal mode or hard mode. As you can see, there's a lot to get these maces, and it's just going to be the same from job to job. It's entirely interchangeable from character to character. Generally speaking, these jobs, especially if they have like the silver outline to them, are not very good, and you should look at them as a means to, as a placeholder until you're able to obtain the higher level jobs. And if a character doesn't have any good jobs, then you're probably not going to be using them. Alright, I think that about wraps it up for generic jobs. So next I'm going to talk about job pluses. I'm sort of going in chronological order, because long ago there was a time when there was no such thing as a job enchant. So a job plus is a job specific to a character. I luckily managed to find one of the few characters whose I hadn't maxed out their job plus already, so I can showcase it. So here we have Anastasia, and she has a job plus called Battle Blossom. Now in this case, we go to look at how to obtain, and nothing is there. So that could be confusing. So the thing about job pluses is they are going to vary a little bit, but the one constant is they're always centered around an event, which in Anastasia's case, it's the Blood Wolf by any other name. But both the tokens to unlock the job and the equipment pieces to finally master the job, those will all be tied up in the event. So in the case of Anastasia, you would play through, I think it's the EX or the EX Plus, and then get the pieces that way. And for any character that has a job plus, it will be the same way. Just whatever event they're tied up in, that's how you obtain it. And one thing that sets them apart is rather than have a name of the job for the tokens, it'll have the character's name. So we see like Anastasia token. In the case of some events, they're pretty easy to obtain if the event is located in the archive. So let's go to the gallery here. And by gallery, I mean the event tab. So here we see the event archives. This isn't going to include 100% of the events. Things get added to it. as time goes, and then some things just don't. So sometimes you just have to wait for an event to rerun. But in the case of these guys here, they will show you what the event is called and then what characters are involved. Now, most of the cases here, one of these characters is going to be a character you can get for free, and another one is like someone who has a job plus, or neither in the case of the Rebecca one and the Don Terrace one. But in general, if you're trying to catch a specific character's job plus and they're in the archive, then you can access it for 24 hours free. And if for some reason you needed more than one at the same time, you could use an archive access. I've never needed to use an archive access though, so I wouldn't sweat that too much. Yeah, so I guess that is it for job pluses, and we'll move on to job enchants. Alright, and here we have Mia to check out job enchants. For her, it goes from bishop to bishop sacrament. Now, it's a very similar process to a job plus in terms of you level up the old job first. You have to get it to 11. You don't have to master it. I just mastered this job because this job enchant didn't exist yet when I mastered it. Otherwise, I'd just leave it at 11. You will get the items back, but it's better not to. Now, the way that job enchants differ from a job plus is that they're not tied to a specific event. They're all permanent farmable items, and they're not unique to characters either. Like, two different characters could both have Bishop Sacrament, and they do in most cases. And the way that these are acquired is through one specific quest. Now, I happen to have 6 of these already, but if I was to look for where to find them, you would see that it has a currency here, which is, those are called job enchant materia or something like that. Enchantment materia, there we go. And there's a stage just for that. In fact, let's go visit that stage real quick to show a couple of different things. So when it comes to these tokens for getting job enchants, I would just think of them as, like 40 enchantment materia. They're really interchangeable. You'll see that when certain enemies die, they'll actually drop some tokens, and all it really is just a discount of enchantment coins. But this stage is a stage you will get very familiar with, because this is where you get the enchantment materia, and the only other way to get them is from like milestones, or there's one memento that gives it as a vision clear bonus. But mostly it's going to be this stage, and it exists in both single player and multiplayer, though that makes it easier if you have fairly weak units and it's harder to clear it. But it won't take long for this to be an easy clear. Like, you could do it without enlightenment. Alright, and then that's that stage. And then for the items used to clear or to master the job, they can be acquired through a different stage, which I can show you real quick. But you can actually circumvent that and just use the materia itself. It will cost more, like in terms of how many of the job enchant coins it takes to fulfill the amount that you would need. Like, normally it's like 80 pieces to make a diagram, and so you end up needing 240. You'll have to double that in the case of using job enchant coins to get the piece, but sometimes it's worth it. Like, some of these levels, like say the in particular, like the Dark Cavalier or the Holy Cavalier, when you look at like how many different types there are, you're probably better off just using the coins. And one other thing that I wanted to mention about job enchants is that they don't require 6 unique items that you have to put together to master the job. There's actually just one unique item for the job. I mean, they're not unique. They're unique to the job enchant. But you do have to make that item 3 times for the last 3 levels of the job, rather than just have 6 unique things at the very end. But other than that, it's a very similar process. Okay, I believe that is everything for job enchants. One more thing that I wanted to add that probably should have gone in the Job Plus section. I couldn't find a character on my unit screen with an applicable setup of what I'm about to describe, but there is an item, a generic item, that you can use to level up a character's job. There's two different types: the Omni Crystal diagram piece and then just the Omni Crystal piece, depending on what type of item you're replacing. And these are going to be very rare at first, and then the more you play the game, eventually you'll have more of them than you can count. And you can use these on every type of job except a job plus. You have to get the job plus pieces, but anything else, whether it's a character's unique job or just a generic job, you can use those Omni Crystal pieces. I often recommend them on collab characters to avoid having to farm out limited content. Okay, yeah, that is it for that section. So now we're going to move on to good players and classes for beginners. Okay, now we're going to talk about characters and jobs that are good for beginners. So I've assembled a party here of characters that are fairly easy to get. In fact, I believe you should get a free Setsuna as a new player, and then the rest of them are all normal pool units. And in the case of Gerald here at the front of the party, if you don't draw him after 1 week of the free summons that you get, or any of the other subsequent summonings you do, I would use the unit selector that they give you to get him, because he will carry you long and far, even before you get his job plus. And then once you get his job plus, he's like 9 levels of beast. So let's see, make sure I'm on manual here, and we'll go into the level, and I would like to show you why I think of these characters and their jobs as good starting out. And to be blunt, a lot of it has to do with AoEs. Like Shenmei, whose first job is Pirate, can just run in and start blasting. It only hits one person on here, but it's pretty good for a turn 1. Gerald can also do something very similar, because when it comes to early game content, enemies aren't going to have that much health, and a lot of it you're going to want to speed through whether you're playing on manual or auto. So characters with just giant AoEs are going to be great for situations like that. Of course, you're going to want to have a little bit of diversity in damage types, just in case, but that's less of an early game thing and more of a mid game element. You'll also want to have a little bit of support, just in case enemies start throwing status effects around or hurt you a little bit too much. So having somebody who can use a move like Vaccine or Poison Pill, anything that will nullify statuses, is also good to have. Even without job enchants, professors are very handy, especially in the early game. They'll start to get eclipsed by faster units with a merchant job later on, but don't worry about that. The most important thing is to have units that can do damage right out of the gate and then get veiled so they don't get stopped in doing damage. Another important thing I would recommend once you start encountering bosses is to have a unit with a charge up. I'll get one going in one moment here. Anything like a Holy Brawler or a Magic Meister, somebody who can buff a stat a lot, and then you can use it to take out a boss. Or if they have a big AoE, sometimes you can nuke a ton of dudes at the same time. Setsuna is like one of the best characters for doing that. And that way, even if you don't have all the stat bonuses you need from job masteries and you don't have access to job pluses yet, you can still end up laying a lot of pain on the enemy, like so. It'll depend on who you get from your summons, but a lot of these characters are farmable 3 times a day in the early story mode chapters, so you can get that ball rolling fairly quickly. Alright, I would say that would wrap up new player questions number 2. It's a little longer than I thought, but I hope all of you new players got some benefit out of this, and good luck on your subsequent maps. Alright, see you next time.